All right, everyone. Welcome to December. I'm your host, Joshua Jacob. Welcome back to Rhythm and Roads. We have a special guest on this episode. He's a worship pastor at Church on the Move. He has his own podcast, One Degree of Andy, and he's a former member of the Christian music group For Him. Welcome, Andy Chrisman.
Hey man, thanks. Glad to
Yeah,
be
such
here.
a such a pleasure to have you on Rhythm and Roads. And I'm looking forward to hearing your testimony and getting to know your journey. So
Thank you, Joshua. Yeah,
yes, sir. But I got to say, the background of that wall there is wow, what a
it's my
timeline of a history, huh?
it's interesting. I've got a lot of these. If you could see around my office here, kind of got all my stuff on the walls, and I've had a 40-year career in Christian music and in ministry. So I used to, I don't know, I just a few years ago, I got all this stuff back out and kind of decorated my office slash studio here, just because sometimes you go, what did I do in the past? Was it Yeah. Did it do any good? You go, yeah, you know what? God did
Yeah,
some
like,
really good things. So,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
it's good to be reminded.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely, if you ever have some doubt or anything, just look around and see what God did. You're like, okay,
That's
I'm
right.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. I also do a
Well,
lot of coaching and consulting. And so it kind of helps remind people, yeah, he knows what he's talking about. He's done a few things.
yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. That's awesome. Well, thank you, Andy, for sharing that about that. But I really want to get to just the story of your testimony of how you came to know, your relationship with God and just
Sure.
the calling to be a singer, because yeah, I'm definitely a huge fan of your voice. I mean, your voice
Thank you.
really stands out and for God to give you that, that's just a beautiful skill to have, but to use it for his kingdom, that's even better.
Well, and let me just press on that for a second because
Yeah,
I definitely understand that this is something that God gave me. It's not something
right.
that I just found and,
Right.
can claim as my own. I understand that he gave it to me and why he gave it to me, and the purpose has taken most of my life to figure that out. But what I have been, my uh, the discipline that I have is to, my part in this is to keep it strong, keep it focused, do my best with it, because someday I'll have to give it back to him, just like the scriptures say. We'll be called into account for the opportunities that he's given us. So, yeah,
Right.
I do know it's from him, and I know that he wants me to use it for his glory.
Right. No, I totally agree. That's true. And that's the same for all of us too, that have a skill that we do have to honor him with it. And in the end, he's hold us accountable. But
Yeah,
the fact that what did you do with that, what I gave you, and
right.
I totally agree with that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. But let's go with chapter one. Chapter one,
Okay.
season one of Andy Chrisman. So what's the story of the journey on that?
Well, I was born a little baby in Waco, Texas. Man, I won't tell you the year, but yeah, I grew up in Central Texas. My parents were both. My dad was former military and was a Gideon pastor for a little while. He's the guy that would, travel around and put the Bibles in hotel rooms
Wow.
and raise money for that and actually speak at places to share the gospel. So I had kind of that heritage, and my parents were. My dad was the head deacon of a little Southern Baptist church in Waco. My mom was if people listening don't know what WMU is, Women's Missionary Union. That was the older ladies in the church that, you know, supported missions. And so she was that Sunday school class teacher.
Oh, wow.
So I don't ever remember not going to church. I was
Yeah.
always in church. At some point, I realized I could sing. My parents realized I could sing, that I had an unusual gift, even at 4 and 5 years old. So I would, sing at school, and I would sing. My mom would take me around to these WMU meetings on Saturdays, and I always joke that my mom created the soundtrack, because back in when I was a young kid, I you couldn't go to the local Christian bookstore. They didn't have one at the time,
Wow.
and buy a soundtrack of a song. So I would learn songs from Gaither records, and she would buy the sheet music, take it across the street to a lady who was a piano teacher, set up one of those little portable cassette recorders,
Oh, yeah.
and record her playing the piano on
Wow.
those cassettes. And then she would take me somewhere on a Saturday, and she'd press play on that little recorder, put a microphone to it, and then I would sing along to it. So that's just kind of how I started. I was always singing
Interesting.
somewhere,
Yeah.
and always in church. Um, you know, I started leading worship at my church. We didn't call it worship back then. The hymn
Yeah.
service. I led the hymn
Okay.
service probably when I was 14 years old. I was always in choirs. So that's kind of my history of singing. But I've always grown up around the gospel, grown up around church music, Christians, pastors, deacons. My everybody in my family was a Christian, so it's not like I've ever lived in a non-Christian environment. I've
Mm,
always heard the gospel, but I can
right.
point to one moment when I was 11 years old. My brother was a he was 10 years older than me, but he was already a worship pastor at a church in Arkansas. And I went up to visit him one time. My parents went up and um, he and I stayed late after church just talking. And then in his car that night, he just point blank asked me if I'd ever given my heart to Christ. And I'm like, I don't think I have.
Wow.
And he said, well, let's do it. He pulled over on the side of the road and said, let's just do it right now. Let's make this commitment right now. And it'll be once for all. So I got down on the floorboard of his little 74 Pinto and gave my heart to Christ. And so I have that memory. And then it was funny when we got back to where he lived and met my parents and we were on our way back to Waco. I told my parents what I did, and my dad just laughed and goes, "Son, you probably done that by your bedside 100 times, but I'm glad you have you know, a place to plant your flag now
Yeah.
with your salvation." So anyway, that's it. There's no real crazy um, salvation story. I was a good kid, wasn't perfect, but I was a good kid in high school, and went on from there.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And I want to touch base on that too, because I feel like because I was brought up in church as well, right?
Hmm.
I went to private school all my life, never been to public. I was brought up, my dad was a worship leader and he did, different things, and I was brought up in that. But there is a calling to have that own personal experience with asking God to, Jesus in your heart, right? To because even if, like you said, we're brought up in all that, there still has to be that one-on-one with accepting Christ in your heart.
That's right. Yeah,
And
there
I'm
is.
and I'm glad, yeah, and I'm glad that you actually had that moment. So that's a beautiful moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something I can always look back on and go, well, if I have to pinpoint it. Now, as I've gotten older and the more time I've spent in ministry and spent around people,
Yeah.
I also know that, man, God's gracious, and I think that many of us have recommitted ourselves or have
Yeah.
spoken those words,
That's
not
right.
even knowing that we've done it many times in
Yeah.
faith. And so, I yeah, I'm glad God gave me that central moment.
Yes. Yeah, that moment. And that moment changed everything from that moment
Hmm.
on.
That's right.
Yeah. No, well, thank you for sharing that. I like to go to the story behind For Him. How did that
Sure.
start?
So yeah, I went to if we pick it up kind of out of my high school years, I went to college in Stillwater, Oklahoma at Oklahoma State University. I
Okay.
was I'd said earlier that I always sang and I knew I was good at it, but growing up in Waco, even though I found out later Word Records was based there, I didn't even dawn on me to try and figure this out as a career. I'm just like, the only career path I could see was being a minister of music. And I thought that was just the lamest thing in the world.
Really?
So I did, yeah,
Wow.
I'm just like, I don't, all the ministers of music, they sounded very operatic and choral. And,
Oh, okay.
it just seemed like there was just this one style of music that I was going to sing the rest of my life. And man, I loved the, secular radio in the 70s and 80s. It's,
Mm.
to me, that's the greatest era of music
Oh
ever.
yeah, I
And
agree.
so I would mimic, people like Steve Perry
Oh
and
wow.
Phil Collins and Michael McDonald and Kenny Loggins and those great
That
singers from that era.
yeah.
I wanted to do what they were doing, and I could
Right.
make my self sound like them. So I'm
Right.
just like, where's the opportunity? And now the Christian music industry was going strong, and I was listening to the Imperials and Leon Patillo and Amy Grant and Michael Libby Smith,
Yeah.
DeGarmo and Key. I had all those records, so I knew that was there. But again, I'm like, I don't know how to get there. Do I just go to Nashville? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I ended up just going to school in Oklahoma, getting my engineering degree, and God just kept finding me. He kept giving me opportunities
Um,
to sing in little bands at church and lead worship in these lead worship at my college church. I got into these little traveling groups in my college church where I was starting to expand my horizons on what I could do with my voice.
Yeah.
And then, man, one day I got to a little bit of a crossroads in my life where I was like, I just don't. I hate school. I hate what I'm studying. I know I'm supposed to be a musician, but I don't know what to do. I'm just like, God, just help me. Will you just please help? Just tell me what to do. So it was after that really sincere prayer, it was maybe a couple of days later that my phone rang in my apartment at college, and it was Roger Breland, the guy who owned Truth.
Oh,
And through a
wow.
crazy
Okay.
set of events that only God could orchestrate,
Yeah.
he found out that I was a singer, and he knew my brother, and he knew some people just kind of in my circle of friends.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hey, would you consider flying out and auditioning for me?" And I was like, "Well, that's got to be the Lord, right?" I just prayed
Wow.
that he would kind of send me a lifeline to get
Right.
me where I'm supposed to be. And sure enough, Roger Breland calls me. I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." So
Yeah.
my dad spotted me the money for a plane ticket, and my dad, like I said earlier, he was a military man. He was in the ministry. He's kind of a by the book guy. Follow the rules,
Yeah.
do the little things right. Don't get crazy, and you don't have anything to regret in life. And so I was really terrified to ask him to let me leave college and go into the singing group, much less borrow $300 for a plane ticket in the middle of the school year to go figure out if this is the right thing to do.
Right.
And Joshua, I'll never forget what he said. He said, Andy, never give yourself the chance to say what if. You're
Mm.
20 years old.
Wow.
Go check it out. I'll invest this money in you. And
Wow.
if it doesn't work out, come back and finish school. But just go, see if it's
Yeah.
something.
That's right.
So sure enough, I got there, sang for Roger. He hired me on the spot. I left school a month later and was
Wow.
on the road full time. So I was in this group Truth that was, it was a large ensemble that toured nonstop. We did 350 shows a year. So we were
Really?
somewhere
Whoa.
every night, sometimes two and three different places a day, singing.
Wow.
Full band. We made a studio album in Nashville about every 9 months. We were signed to the Benson label. So there was a lot of opportunity there. And then, artists like Steve Green and Avalon and Russ Lee of New
Wow.
Song and Natalie
Yeah.
Grant all came. That's just a few of the people that came through Truth back in the day. And
Okay.
then that's where I met Marty, Kirk, and Mark. Mark was already in the group when I joined.
Okay.
Marty came a couple months later. Kirk came a couple months after that. And so the four of us were the four male singers for Truth for about 3 years.
Really? Okay.
And so the four of us did about 1,000 shows together
Wow.
while we were in Truth. And then the label until we were on the Benson label. Then Benson was like, "Hey, we see some value in the four of you guys, and there's not really we want to kind of reboot the Imperials, that sound, that really great pop sound with pop producers, but with a sincere gospel message. And we want to try this." So we're like, "Great." We tried it. First single came out in fact, it's on the wall up here somewhere. First single came out in April of 1990, and that
Wow.
was Where There Is Faith. Went number one
Oh
right off
yeah.
the bat. Set records at the time for a debut single, and we were off. We were off on that. We had
There
a
it
good 20
is.
year career. Yeah,
20 years, really.
yeah.
Wow.
Hmm.
20 years. I want to, wow, what a testimony on that. And then we're just getting started too. I got to say the fact that what if is very important. And I feel like, a lot of people out there sometimes let fear stop them from trying something out. Even doubt, self-doubt, right?
Yeah,
And I've even experienced that. I've experienced certain things, right? With the unknown is what really gets you to be like, oh man, what happens if it doesn't work out? And then I'm like, I failed at this or I made a mistake. But that's the thing that I feel like is worth living is making those mistakes, is going on those what ifs, because at least you can look back and said, like your dad said, hey, at least you can go and said, I tried it. If it
yeah,
didn't work out, at least you don't have to wonder. And that's really important, and I feel like every road that God's put us on, it takes those efforts to go through those what ifs and
right.
those, kind of ask God, okay, God, if I do this, what is the after effect? And don't worry about it, just try it.
Well, but you also have to be very careful. It's a fine line.
Right.
And I work with artists and worship pastors all over the country.
Yeah.
And there's a fine line of overinflating your abilities.
Mm.
Like, I mean, come on. You can dream and you can want it, but if you don't have the skill set or the discipline, you're not going to
Right.
make it.
True.
I mean, that
Yeah.
it's just not going to happen. You can want something, doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Right.
Now, if there is this tugging on your heart, if there's just something that just God has been speaking to you over and over, or there's just this unsettling in your spirit, you should follow that.
Yeah.
And but do
Right.
it in the right way. Have good
Right.
godly counsel around you. Make sure you're not the only one that thinks you're awesome. You need to have people around you that confirm it. And that's what it was with me. I never really asked to do anything, Joshua. I
Really.
never I never forced my way into any situation. I was always asked to step up.
Wow.
Hey, we heard you. Come join us. Hey, it's the way it was all the way through high school. It's the way that was all the way through college, even in my professional career with Truth and For Him, and then into my solo career in worship ministry. I never, I never like waved my own flag and just said, somebody hire me, somebody bring me in. I'm awesome. It was God opening the doors for me and sending someone to come get me. And so, you have to be very
That's awesome.
careful not to
Yeah.
want it so much that
Right.
you disregard your lack of ability,
Right. No,
and
yeah.
and that sounds mean sometimes. And I've told some singers that I've worked with in the past, I'm like, I'm just going to tell you, you need to find something else to do because I don't know anyone that would hire you to do this. So,
Wow.
you know, that's
Yeah.
that's something you just wanted, but really wasn't what God gifted you to do.
Mm.
So I know
That's
that's a
true.
downer, but um, but yeah, it
That's
never
great
hurts to
wisdom
try.
though.
Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't
walk it
hurt to
out and
try.
see what happens.
Yeah. Great wisdom on that. No, I totally agree. And that's interesting is when you said right now that you didn't go just say, "Hey, I'm here, notice me or look at me."
Yeah.
Is God was providing the opportunities where they just asked you and you already was like, "Wow, okay." So that's a big difference. I like that. Well, thanks for sharing about this history on For Him, but I gotta say, like that's amazing. I mean, that I never knew that far back about For Him on that. But I gotta say, one of my favorite tracks from For Him is definitely "Let the Lion Run Free."
Oh wow.
That means a lot to me. Yeah, I feel like that gives you kind of what I was sharing. The boldness to go out and if God's given you an open door, and like I was saying earlier, and I agree with what you said too, but I feel like just like Moses, right? Moses was asked to do that and he was very afraid. He was like, well, I don't know about this. I stutter. And there's those times where you do have to let that boldness rise up in you and say, you know what, I'm going to do it. And even if it is God's calling for you, it can be scary at times. And you
That's
you
right.
must know that. Like there's times my brother's been through some mission trips to, you know, to certain Uganda and some other places. I mean, he wasn't used to that, but he took the call and it wasn't easy. But afterwards, he was like, wow, that was worth it. So it's just that song helps me in that when I need that, give some boldness is hearing that
Wow.
song.
Well, I'm honored. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
then
I think
the
that's from
real
our
thing.
obvious that's from our obvious record, I think.
Yeah, obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Came out around 98, 97, 98. Yeah.
it's a good album. And the real thing,
Oh
great
yeah.
song. Real thing.
Thank you. That's one of my
Yeah,
favorites.
yeah.
That is one of my favorites. I just saw a chart the other day. I was doing some research on some projects I'm working on, and Real Thing I think was top five for radio singles in the year of 1995.
Oh,
And I didn't realize it. I knew it. I knew it was a big number one song for us. I didn't realize it was that big. But I have a great story about that if you want to hear it.
yeah, go ahead.
That was the very first time that I worked with producer Michael Amardian.
Okay.
And Omar was, man, he's a legendary producer. I mentioned the Imperials earlier, but he's got Grammys and so many Grammys and even a an Oscar
Wow.
on his shelf just because he wrote and produced Christopher Cross all those years
Wow.
and worked with legendary artists all through the 70s and 80s
Yeah.
and also Amy Grant and Gary Chapman and Wayne Watson just worked with all the big dogs for a long time.
Yeah.
So that was our first opportunity to work with him was on the Ride album. And as I went into the studio, I was nervous. He used to
Oh,
record out at Amy Grant's place.
really?
She
Wow.
had a big barn that was a studio called Tejas, and that's where he would record and had all his gear set up. And I
Wow.
just remember going in and meeting him. He was so kind, and I was so nervous to get behind the microphone and sing for this legend because I'm telling you, I had all his records. I mean,
Oh,
the guy was
man.
just such a hero of mine,
Yeah.
and it was the most fun experience. I mean, we recorded that lead vocal in maybe 40 minutes.
Is that
I mean,
right?
he
40
just pulled
minutes.
so much out of me. It was so energetic and fun. I had the time of my life. And I still look back when I hear that vocal, I just see Michael Amartian and his
Wow.
engineer just grooving at the console and the high fives and the hugs and just that was a professionally that was one of my favorite moments.
Oh, I bet. That's an amazing story. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that. Wow. See, now I know more about Real Thing of
Yeah,
just
there you
behind the
go.
scenes on that. That's cool.
Yeah, and
And then,
another thing about Real Thing, it used to be called Jesus in the Real World. That was the original title of the
oh,
song.
was it? Oh, wow.
And when we were working on the album,
Mm.
Nashville can be a small place when it comes to information. And we found out that Stephen Curtis was about to release a song called Heaven in the Real World. And we were
Oh,
like,
okay.
oh no, we can't have Jesus in the real world competing against heaven in the real world.
That makes
So we
sense.
changed the title to The Real Thing. So,
Interesting.
yeah,
Well, that's awesome. I didn't even, yeah, I mean, probably not a lot of people don't know that. So
yeah,
that's interesting. Wow. One more song I want to add is Before the River Came.
yeah,
That is a definitely a huge one for me too. I feel like that's really one of those that we kind of go back and forth, right? In our sometimes I'm not saying not all the time, but there's times where you kind of explore on your own and you go on your own journey, and I feel like God calls you back, and you kind of like a prodigal son. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And that song really, the lyrics in that really speaks volume.
mm,
So yeah, that
yeah. And
song's a
that's a
really
pretty
good
special
song.
song for us as well. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a great song. So I do want to get to know the story behind your podcast, One Degree.
sure.
What motivated you to start that?
Well, the full story is that when I moved to Tulsa in '05, I became worship pastor at Church on the Move here. You mentioned that at the opening.
Yeah.
And there's been a radio station, a big, just one of the great classic Christian radio stations here in town for almost 50 years now called KXOJ.
Okay.
And the year after I moved here, another Christian station came into town and called Spirit 102.3, and they were part of the Cox Communications network. So it was their first jump into Christian broadcasting, and it came into Tulsa. We're just like, how are these two, stations going to, is there enough people in Tulsa to listen to two Christian radio stations? Turns out there was. That
Okay.
station really took off, and they contacted me and said, "Hey, you're the worship pastor at the largest church in town, and you're also a name in Christian music. We have an idea. We'd like you to do a Sunday morning worship show with us." And I was like, well, that sounds interesting. I don't know how to do that. And they're like, don't worry about it. We'll provide the studio, the engineer. We've got some people that will help you figure out how to figure out how to do this and become a radio personality. So I did that there for a couple of years. It became the number one show on the weekends in
Wow.
Tulsa,
That's
and
awesome.
I was really enjoying it. And then Cox pulled the plug on that station.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah. In fact, I was coming out of the dentist office, a dentist appointment, and the station manager called me and said, "Hey man, what are you doing right now?" And I said, "I'm coming out of the dentist office." He said, when you get in your car, he said, I just need to tell you that they're pulling the plug on Spirit 102.3. And I
Oh
was like,
man.
"Oh man, I hate that." I said, "When is that going to happen?" Because I'm thinking this is going to take, 6 months or whatever to reformat.
Yeah.
He goes, "Are you in your car?" He said, "Put the station on." It had already flipped to talk radio. It was uh it was Rush Limbaugh instead of Christian music. And I'm like, he's like literally in Atlanta, they made the decision at 9 a.m., flipped the switch.
Wow.
And he said, so I walked over to KXOJ, like I mentioned earlier, to my
Yeah.
friend Bob over there, and I said, "Hey, do you want the show?" He goes, "Bring it on." He said, "And I've got some friends that would like would like to run the show as well. It's starting to get people are starting to hear about it.
Yeah.
So when that happened, we went from one station to maybe 10, and we were doing 10 versions of the show. And then I hired a syndicator, and within a couple of years, we were at 300 stations around the world. So we've been doing the Worship with Andy Chrisman radio show almost we're walking into our 20th year next year with stations
That's
all over the world.
awesome.
Now, having
Wow.
said that, that sets up the podcast because um, I play worship music, pray, read scripture. It's kind of like a worship service online for 2 hours or on the radio
Right.
for 2 hours. But I would also have, whatever Chris Tomlin would stop in town, or Matt Redmond, or, Phil Wickham, or Hillsong, or Bethel, or the guys from Elevation. Whenever they were in town,
Yeah.
I would interview them, or I would get on the phone like we're doing here on Zoom and interview them, and I would add that into my show as a part of the show.
Okay.
And one day I had Clay Cross come on because he was an old friend of mine, and
Wow.
he had a worship record from his church. And I'm like, hey, come
Okay.
on, let's talk about it. We'll play some songs. And we started talking about the old days. And I'm like, this isn't the radio show. This is something else. Same thing happened with Russ Taff when he had a worship record come out. Same thing happened with Wayne Watson. He had a worship record come out. I'm like, this is something different.
Yeah.
So what it became in 2000 or 2022 was I was like, I think I want to get into the podcast game, and I have some interviews that I can start with. And I just edited them, did it all myself. Um, and all of a sudden there was an audience for it. And I'm getting 3,000 downloads a week from this
Sweet. That's
show.
awesome.
And so I just started calling all my friends. And everybody said yes, everyone.
That's
And
amazing.
before I knew it, I'd done 100 episodes.
Wow.
And I've done 2 seasons of this. And then I get a call from K-Love. K-Love um, has a podcast company called Access More, and they have
Okay.
people like Beth Moore and Christine Kane and Max Lucado and some of the really heavy hitters in the podcast
Yeah.
and book world. And they're like, we don't have anything that has to do with music like you're doing. He said, well, we want to talk to you about partnering and helping take over your podcast. So I signed with them in 2024. We're just finishing up our first year with
Really?
Access
Okay.
More, and now
Wow.
it's blowing and going, man. It's been so fun. We've yeah, I don't even know how many episodes. I'd have to go back and look.
That's
But
amazing.
yeah, it's been
That's
super
awesome,
cool.
Andy. Oh, I
Yeah.
bet. Yeah. And I loved how just from going from different segments, right? You're saying, well, I went
Yeah.
here, then and then you got it, just different doors open
Yeah.
for your podcast to grow. So that's
Well,
awesome.
you remember what I said earlier? I didn't ask for any of this.
Right. Yeah.
I literally got a call from a radio station going, "Hey, would you like to do this?"
Yeah.
And then my friend Bob said at KXOJ, he just said, "Hey, if you ever want to bring the show over here, I'll take it."
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. So, yeah, the concept of the show is I've had 40 years in the CCM industry. I
Yeah.
have lots of friends. I've met everyone, and I just want to tell their stories. There's a great
Yeah.
story to be told from
Great.
from the last 40 years of of people coming out of obscurity, great success,
Yeah.
and then they disappear, and then they show up somewhere else doing something completely different. And I think there's some real hope in those stories of, look, just because that time in your life is over doesn't mean God's done with you. God continues to go glory to glory, and I believe that if you'll stick with him, he'll have greater and greater things for you to do. It may not look the same, but there is significance in your life, and he wants to use you if you're willing. And so many of the artists that have been on the show have been through addiction. They've lost their marriages.
Wow.
They've lost all their money. They've attempted suicide, or they've
Wow.
lost their faith. They've walked away from their faith and come back. These stories are just like everyone else we know in life, right? We
Right.
have people in our life and our families and our friend groups that are going through all of these things.
Right.
And to hear your favorite artist that maybe you hadn't heard from in a while,
Right.
like Brian Duncan or like John Schlitt. You mentioned these guys have all been on my podcast as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you go, I had no idea they went through the same thing that I'm currently going through.
Right.
And look what God did through them. So it's a real beautiful, just vehicle of hope.
Yeah.
And just don't give up. Just continue to make yourself available to the Lord, and He will use you. He's faithful. He never gives up on us. and we should never give up on him.
Uh,
And that's anyway, I'm going to continue to tell those stories. I don't know where the podcast goes over the next few years, but
yeah.
we've already lined up guests for the first half of next year, and
Wow.
it's yeah, it's really fun to do.
That's awesome. Wow, Andy, thank you for sharing that. And I'm just blessed by what you just said right now, because it isn't important for others to hear that they're not alone through their struggle, right? And even those, like you said, we haven't even heard from in a while, then they share their story. You're like, what? They went through that? Like when John shared his story, I was just blown away. Like,
Yeah.
what? You almost committed suicide, And yeah, yeah, but thank you for what you're doing in helping so many people out there to just have the message of hope, by having other people on your podcast as well. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes, even if we don't go deep in those stories, it's fun for people to hear how their favorite records were made.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I've
Yeah.
had some artists on where we didn't even talk about their story. We just talked about their experiences in the studio and their
Right.
who they toured with and crazy stories on the road. And that's fun too. I mean, it can't all be tears and heartache.
All
There's a lot of
right.
laughs with it as well.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. If I brought a favorite artist on, I would want to know how they made a certain album or
Yeah.
something. But all right. Well, I want to ask, is there any future of a reunion with for him?
Oh man. You don't know how many times I've been asked that question, not just by people on podcasts or in the media, but just my friends in Nashville. And I just got a message today from someone you would know saying, "Is there any chance you guys could get together and do this event with me?" Um,
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I don't know. We were all pretty spread out,
Yeah.
and we're all doing our own things. We all live in different states and
Okay.
have
Yeah.
different levels of commitments to the things that we're doing. So I
Okay.
never say no. There again, there are a lot of offers out there right now, and we're just trying to find the ones that make sense for us. And if this is something, what we don't want to do is just get out and do concerts just to do them.
Okay.
We don't feel like that's part of. We've already done what God's called us to do. That's why we don't do it
I
anymore.
see.
We got
I
to a
see.
point where like, all right, we finished our race. We've done what God's called us to do. We feel like it's time for us to move on and do other things.
Okay.
So we're never going to just crank the bus back up just so we could have something to do.
Something
There's
to
got to
do.
be
I
a
see.
purpose in it. There's got to be a deeper
Right.
meaning in, hey, this is God's calling us to do this right now. And there is a need for what we have to say and for our style of music. And, so that's kind of what we're just kind of being patient with. And, we're getting older, so we can't wait forever, but I don't know.
All
Never
right.
say never, but there's nothing on the horizon right now.
All right. Well, I mean, never know. So,
Never know.
yeah. And I just want to bring up something a little different on the subject, but it's surprisingly that next year Journey is coming to their final tour.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I was shocked, like, I mean, I'm a huge Journey fan and I've seen him multiple times, but like, wow, this is really coming to an end. I mean, what's the keyboardist's name? Jonathan Cain?
Yeah, Jonathan
Great,
Cain.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
great songwriter. I mean, of
Yeah.
course, he's a Christian as well, believer,
Right.
and he has his own music too. But just like, wow, John, like, just to see what God's going to do after, their chapter comes to an end. It's
Yeah.
going to be something to see. So, but are you a big fan of Journey?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
gosh. I've seen them with Arnell uh
Okay. Arnell. Yeah.
leading, and I never got to see him with Steve Perry, but Steve Perry's he's one of my heroes, and
Yeah.
I know people that know him, and I know that he's a really good dude. Hopefully I would get to meet him one day and let him know what an influence has been on my life. But yeah, everything has an end. I don't know that. Are we supposed to be out there rocking when we're 90? Maybe. I don't know. If you can and you want to, go do it. But
90.
but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of my disposable income at this point is spent on going to see artists before they hang
Yeah.
it up. There's a
Yeah.
bunch that I've missed that I wish I would have gone to see, but I every time someone of that caliber comes anywhere close, I try to go
Oh
see
yeah.
them and just be in the room one more time to be a part of those songs again.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just want to add one more thing to that with the artists is like U2, right? I've seen U2 and
Hmm.
that was an incredible experience. Or Sting. I've seen Sting
Yeah.
and but the thing is, these are legends that also write music in a way that brings certain memories of like growing up, right? And you just
Yeah.
appreciate just how they take their time with their music and
Sure.
something just incredible, you
Well,
know?
there's something about being in that elite, they're at an elite level
Yeah.
of musicianship, writing,
Right.
and performance. And that's that's something that I think, like a Christian music, I think doesn't, and have to be careful here to say this, but I think it's been this way for a long time that Christian music doesn't necessarily put a premium on artistry. And I think that's something that makes secular music so much bigger in the minds of the consumer
Oh, I see.
is that the only way to get to the top in secular music is just be the best. Just be the absolute best. And when I look back on the history of Christian music, especially in the 80s and 90s, I feel like that was the case. Like you were battling each other. We were battling not in a physical way, but
Right, right.
just in a creative way. We were always battling DC Talk and Point of
Really?
Grace and Phillips, Craig and Dean and
Wow.
Michael W. Smith, and we were all friends, and we still are to this day. But
Yeah.
we'd hear each other's records and go, "Okay, I see what you did there. We're gonna go get this producer, and we're going to up our budget and we're going
That's
to go this
crazy.
direction because we need to be as good or better than that." I mean,
Right.
there was this synergy of pushing each other
Yeah.
all the time. And
Like,
that's kind of what I miss in Christian music these days is that, there's a little bit of, kind of a one sound, everything kind of sounds the same, hard to distinguish one artist from another in
true.
a
Yeah.
way. But, you know, that's what works in or at least used to work in secular music. You can make an argument that secular music, a lot of that sounds the same as well, and it's hard to, when was the
Yeah.
last time a band broke through? They're just
Yeah.
there's not it anymore.
Yeah. There's none.
It's
That's
all
true. Yeah.
individual faces and voices. So, you
Yeah.
know, maybe I'm wishing for something that's probably never going to come back.
No, hey, that's true. I mean, and that's the thing too. Yeah, I would think even in the '90s, Christian artists were battling out with, "Oh, well, wow, we heard that. Let's
Yeah,
raise the volume up." You know, that's
yeah,
yeah, that's interesting. Well, Andy, I really appreciate your time. It's been such a blessing to have you on Rhythm and Roads. How can the viewers find you on your social media and just the information that you have for your podcast?
yeah. I'm pretty much the only Andy Chrisman out there, so I'm going to pop
Yeah,
up if you search my name, and you can go to andychrisman.com, find my podcast. I'm also on every podcast. Um, Wherever you find your favorite podcast, you're going to find
yeah,
One Degree of Andy. And if you happen to be in a place where you have a Christian radio station, you might hear Worship with Andy Chrisman on Sunday
there you
mornings. If you
go.
don't, call your radio station, ask them to pick up my show. It's a really great show. And then, yeah, if you're in Tulsa, come see me at Church on the Move.
Oh,
I'm here a couple weekends a month leading worship.
there you go. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Andy, for your time and sharing the incredible journey behind For Him and your own personal story. It's been such a blessing to have you on, and I wish you the best moving forward with One Degree and everything that you do. So, in your
All
music.
right. Thank you, Joshua.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you for watching and Merry Christmas to everyone. And we will catch you on the next episode.